It was a cold and dreary morning in the small town. The streets were wet from the rain that had poured throughout the night, and a thick mist hung in the air, muffling the sound of passing cars and the chatter of early risers. In a modest apartment on the edge of town, Clara sat by the window, staring out at the grey world. Her hands clutched a steaming mug of tea, but she barely noticed its warmth. Her heart felt as heavy as the sky outside. Clara had always been the kind of person who filled the silence with words. Whether it was idle chatter with friends or hurried attempts to explain herself during arguments, she relied on words to make sense of the world. But lately, those words had been failing her. Her relationships were strained, her workplace had become a battlefield of misunderstandings, and she felt increasingly isolated. It seemed as though the more she tried to explain herself, the less people seemed to understand her. That morning, her mind replayed the argument she'd had with her best friend, May, the night before. They had been close since childhood, but their once effortless connection had grown tense over the past few months. Clara's constant need to voice her opinions had collided with May's quiet nature. Last night, Clara had accused MIA of being distant, and May, in rare frustration, had snapped back, "Maybe you should just stop talking and listen for once." The words stung, but Clara couldn't deny the truth in them. The thought of losing May's friendship left Clara feeling hollow. She realized she needed to do something, but what? Her instinct was to call MIA and apologize, but another part of her hesitated. Perhaps, for once, she needed to approach things differently. The next day, Clara decided to take a walk to clear her mind. The rain had stopped, and the sun was beginning to break through the clouds, casting a soft golden light over the town. As she strolled through the park, she noticed an elderly man sitting alone on a bench, feeding crumbs to a cluster of sparrows. His face was lined with age, but his eyes sparkled with a quiet contentment that intrigued Clara. Without thinking, she sat down on the other end of the bench. For a few moments, they sat in silence, watching the birds. Clara's mind raced with thoughts of how to start a conversation, but before she could say anything, the man spoke. "Beautiful creatures, aren't they?" he said, his voice soft and steady. Clara nodded. "Yes. They seem so peaceful." The man smiled. "Peace comes when you stop trying to control everything. Just watch, and you'll learn more than you ever could by speaking." His words lingered in Clara's mind long after she left the park. What did he mean by learning through watching? She couldn't shake the feeling that there was wisdom in his statement, so she decided to experiment with silence in her own life. The first opportunity came at work. Clara's team was in the middle of a heated discussion about an upcoming project. Normally, Clara would jump in, offering her opinions and solutions. But this time, she held back and simply listened. At first, it was uncomfortable. She felt an urge to defend herself when someone criticized her previous work. But as she stayed silent, she noticed something remarkable. By the end of the meeting, her colleagues had reached a consensus without her intervention, and when she finally spoke, her words carried more weight because they were fewer. Encouraged by this small success, Clara decided to try the same approach with May. She invited her friend to coffee, and when MIA arrived, Clara resisted the urge to fill the silence with nervous chatter. Instead, she smiled and waited for MIA to speak first. At first, May seemed hesitant, but soon she began to open up. She talked about the pressures she'd been feeling at work and her struggles with anxiety. Clara realized that in her eagerness to share her own thoughts, she had often overlooked May's need to be heard. That day, Clara barely spoke, but their connection felt deeper than it had in months. When they hugged goodbye, Mia's smile was warm and genuine. Over the following weeks, Clara embraced the power of silence in her daily life. She started spending more time observing the world around her, the way sunlight danced on the leaves, the laughter of children in the park, the subtle emotions on people's faces. She found herself more attuned to others' feelings and needs. Her relationships began to improve, and she felt a newfound sense of peace within herself. One evening, Clara returned to the park and found the elderly man on the same bench. She approached him with a smile. "You were right," she said. "Silence does teach you things you can't learn by speaking." The man chuckled. "It's not about silence itself, my dear. It's about making space. When you stop filling every moment with your own voice, you create room for others to share their truths, and for life to reveal its beauty." Clara nodded, feeling the truth of his words resonate deeply within her. She sat down beside him, and together they watched the sparrows in comfortable silence, their presence speaking volumes without a single word. Over time, Clara began to notice profound changes in her life. Her workplace grew more collaborative as she listened more and spoke less. Her friendship with May blossomed into something even stronger than before. Clara found herself becoming a confidant for others, as people gravitated toward her calm and understanding demeanor. And in moments of stillness, she discovered a deeper connection to herself, her thoughts, her feelings, and her aspirations. One day, while sitting by her window at home, Clara watched the rain gently fall against the glass. She reflected on how far she'd come. The constant noise in her mind had quieted, replaced by a serene awareness of the world around her. She realized that silence wasn't emptiness, it was a space brimming with possibilities. That afternoon, she received a text from May. "Thank you for listening to me, Clara. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but it means a lot." Clara smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. She typed back a simple reply, "Always here for you." Clara's journey with silence taught her not only to value her words but also to cherish the moments when words weren't needed. She learned that true connection comes from understanding, and understanding begins with listening. In a world so full of noise, the ability to be silent, truly silent, was a gift she would carry with her forever. The power of silence lies in its ability to create space for understanding, for connection, and for growth. In a world that often values loudness and constant communication, taking a step back to listen can transform relationships and reveal profound insights. Silence isn't about withholding, it's about giving attention, giving respect, and giving room for others to be themselves. If you've ever felt misunderstood or disconnected, try embracing silence. The next time you're in a conversation, resist the urge to speak first. Instead, listen with an open heart. Observe the world around you and let it teach you lessons you might otherwise miss. In the words of the elderly man, when you stop filling every moment with your own voice, you create room for others to share their truths, and for life to reveal its beauty. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who might need a reminder of the power of silence. Let's start a movement of listening, understanding, and connecting. Subscribe to my channel for more motivating and inspiring stories, and remember, sometimes, the most meaningful moments happen in the quietest spaces.